about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck your little credit card scam and jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis XIII, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my roll chop niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day peppering America overseas, pension for the workers, nigga please, embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement, I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut, foreclose the big holes at the tenement, I twist words like a speech impediment, I hope you got good credit bitch, if not better get a new job with benefits, while I play golf with niggas and get cheddar with, new money buys brand new carrots, my old money bunch of great grandparents, you got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at ya, I own every gold mine in South Africa. Thanks, baby, you made me $1 billion. Plus, I own a building for each one of my children's children.
Hey, everybody, we are live. Welcome to Voice of Rebellion Radio. This is your host, Chris J. And tonight, we have a good one in store for you. This is a show talking about the second Cold War that we've kind of fallen into. And it exists. We don't really exactly know when exactly happened, but it seems like sometime in the last few years, it just started to feel like the Cold War all over again between the United States and Russia. And to a lot of people in America have fallen into the same mindset, unfortunately, and the same kind of blindness to what's actually going on like they did in the Cold War, and the same kind of McCarthyist, xenophobic rhetoric a lot of Americans have fallen into, and has brought about, and now the people are different, the character's different, and have a little bit different appeals to them, but some of the same people and what they represent are back. And you have, for example, your Obama or your Hillary Clinton kind of represent an LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson type character that pretend to be the more humanitarian side, but at the same time are absolute warmonger and do wars like Vietnam was LBJ, and Obama and Clinton, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, Iran next. And you have also your less, the ones that do it in the name patriotism or false patriotism and just purely for war. And that would be, with no excuse behind it. They just appeal to that, your Republican side of the coin, I guess you could say. That's your Trumps, and you got your Mitt Romney characters or whatnot, and they're kind of like what Nixon and Ford were back in the 70s during the Cold War. And we definitely don't have, as a president, anybody that's warning us about the military-industrial complex. And like Eisenhower gave, whether you think advertently or inadvertently, did warn us of the military-industrial complex in the 50s, and JFK, who actively fought against the Cold War and wanted to end the Cold War, while all the other presidents seemed to strive to beat the Russians and try to win this, or to try to win this game. JFK believed the game to be all a sham and looked past this silly game and wanted to work with the Russians to end the Cold War, and so the United States could do their own thing, or more bring the Russians to the peace talks about many of the disagreements. And right after this, JFK, of course, gets assassinated. Not long after JFK getting assassinated, Nikita Khrushchev is taken out of power and kind of falls out of power in not the best terms with the with the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. And then the Cold War reignited. It was the Vietnam War, and we had years and years of tensions it kind of relaxed for the 70s, but after the Vietnam War especially, and then reignited in the 80s when we had Ronald Reagan, and over there on the other side we had different various leaders, Andropov, Chernenko, before it went to Gorbachev, who eventually pretty much oversaw the fall of the USSR and the start of the mass tragedy that would be the 90s of Russia, where the country practically fell to nothing, and people starved, women prostituted themselves out for money, those ethnic wars broke out, and much more human tragedies that happened inside of the USSR during the 90s. And we also had the fallout of a crumbling we had the Chernobyl happen in 86. That was kind of just like a symbolic towards the whole fall of the USSR system. And the 90s happened, and then the United States all of a sudden is friends with Russia and Yeltsin after the USSR no longer technically existed. We're talking about the mid-90s, which were a very painful period for Russia, and going into the late 90s. A very rough period as they had this joke, this clown, bozo, Boris Yeltsin as their president over there, who was probably who was known as a notorious drunk, a complete Zionist sellout, and a completely complied with the bankers and helped sell off his country to the bankers 100%, or start the facilitation of this process. However, Boris Yeltsin starts to go into the disgrace of the Russians in the late 90s, and pretty much it seems like almost out of a book. This man that was had military experience before, intelligence experience before, a patriot that seemed to truly love his country, and did not want to, and was willing to take on these bankers head on and throw them in jail, while most leaders wouldn't even dare to do this, and take on the Western bankers and call these people out, and give arrest warrants to these people that are practically off limits to most of the Western world, that their leaders would never, ever dare to do this. And this man rises up and he comes all the way up to be the prime minister in 1999. The president is the ultimate one that controls the country instead of Russia. And then Yeltsin, in disgrace, is forced to hand off power to Putin on the last day of the 1990s. And Putin, going into the 2000s, starts to change things around. The GDP goes up. The inflation goes down. The economy has an economic miracle practically. And that's just the start of it. It was the early 2000s where Russia became respectable again as a power economically. And then 2006 was a major year, because this is the last year of the Putin's first. Actually, it wasn't the last year. It was the middle of his second term, because that was before they changed it. Now it's 6-year terms. Back then they had 4-year terms for president. In the middle of Putin's second term, the Rothschilds are kicked out of Russia, and by 2008, Putin has one last major victory, or actually it was Medvedev's victory, I would say, which was his prime minister, which was taking on the Western foreign policy in Georgia and take out their lackey, Saakashvili, really disgracing them by defeating them in war for not respecting the sovereignty of their allies. What it really was that saying that they didn't care about what the West thought of them, and that they would do what they felt was the best to protect the interests of the Russian people. And that the Georgia War was a major turning point in the relations of the United States and Russia. And there was also a few other things that underlined the alliances with Iran that they built, which was kind of ironic, because out of the countries that the United States supposedly opposed during the Cold War, Iran wasn't one of the countries that the Soviet Union supported. In fact, the Soviet Union was against Iran. And this is where I have that's a major point they can bring up, is about the major faults of the Soviet Union, is that they refused to support a country that truly opposed Zionism and truly opposed the Western ways and the bankers, and actually what the Ayatollah did there by turning Iran around after years of dictatorship and decadence of the West, and returning Iran back to its traditional roots, and turning Iran away from the bankers. Well, the Soviet Union refused to support them. They supported Saddam. Saddam was at that time in the pocketbook of the CIA in the United States, and Saddam ultimately had a little bit of a madman inside of him that he didn't really care when he pretty much proposed the next pieces to the foreign policy of the Middle East, such as gas and Kurds or the invasion of Kuwait. Both of these things were approved by the United States, but the invasion of Kuwait seemed to be this is where the United States would pretend from this point on to not like what Saddam was doing, and they would use Saddam as a boogeyman, and they kind of changed his role. But before that, he was a very powerful ally, which Saddam had a very strong militaristic commander type style to his leadership. So they knew that using Saddam for those years in the 80s, they felt that he could take on major countries like Iran, which he almost defeated Iran in the Iran-Iraq War. But Iranians are also a very strong army at this time, and still are, and were equal. Pretty much, what happened is that the Iranians just had a lot more passion than the Iraqi army, that's always been notoriously known to have not quite the same morale as some of their Middle Eastern counterparts, because especially in the Saddam military, at least in 91, they didn't even have shoes and stuff like that, and clothes. A lot of times they were heavily underfunded, is what the claims were being made about the Iraq army in 91. That Saddam just didn't pay him anything. They didn't even give them didn't give them their proper supplies. So morale in the army was very low, and that's why the fourth biggest military in the world couldn't even face the United States military for 3 days, and it didn't seem like they were really trying, because they weren't really going to bite the tail of their true master. And I think especially at this time, I don't think later on, Saddam, before it was actually thinking of changing sides. I don't think so. I think that Saddam always was secretly, never had really left the Western circle. And that the only time that really, the only reason he was actually overthrown is that he was no longer a piece of the puzzle, or not for the puzzle, the piece of the strategy that the United States wanted to do in the Middle East. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union, throughout its entire history, from start to finish, always had a little bit of, not a little bit of, it was actually, they always seemed to refuse to support a lot of countries that legitimately opposed United States imperialism, / a lot of people that opposed United States imperialism, such as Che Guevara, being one major one in the 60s, which they actually had the Communist Party of Bolivia oppose Che Guevara, which probably helped contribute to the fact that why he got captured in 67. If he would have had the support of other revolutionaries inside the country, and revolutionaries that were part of the Communist Party of Bolivia, Che Guevara might have been able to escape Bolivia, but the Soviet Union sabotaged Che Guevara to a massive extent. And this is the story of also what happened with the Soviet Union's role with Iran, and a few other places that also the Soviet Union just seemed to, it showed the Soviet Union's true colors to an extent, and it seemed that the Soviet Union was ultimately just another side of this game, was the other side of the game, and the Soviet Union during the Cold War, though, was very feared in the United States, and that's what we're feeling today, is that Russia is gaining that same kind of fear that the Soviet Union had back then. But the thing is, Russia's different today. Russia actually has been way more on the offensive of going against the United States foreign policy and Israel's foreign policy, and with issues such as Syria, North Korea, Venezuela. I mean, there's a lot of fronts right now that Russia has taken the opposite side of the United States on these issues, and it's left now. It's definitely has put a lot of animosity in the Western banker circles, and you talk about these top people in the New World Order against Putin, because Putin is the most powerful anti-New World Order leader on the planet right now, in the world right now. There's Putin. I mean, all these other countries, talk about Iran, it's a pretty decent, powerful country. Venezuela, which has now been weakened, it was always kind of a smaller country. North Korea, we're talking about a country that ultimately kind of struggles with alliances with other countries and could be, I mean, this is a country that could be at any point taken over by their southern counterpart. Their existence is not certain, and they don't have a Rothschild bank, so that's why I think Russia keeps the alliance, even though how bad it looks, because North Korea has such a bad rap around the planet, around the world. Only a few countries is North Korea really viewed positively. I think overwhelmingly, many countries are viewed very negatively because of their much different culture. But the fact that they have this traditional, it's rooted in the traditions of Korea to be hermits and isolationist in nature, and it's really not something from communism or something from the Kim Il Sung family that they instilled that in their people. No, it's just really a tradition that North Korea kept, while South Korea moved on into Western decadence and really have turned themselves into another Japan, which that's a very dangerous route for any country to go into, because Japan, they're at a serious crisis where they might not even be a race in the next 30, 40 years because they're not even having children. They've turned their people, a lot of them, to complete. Like 25% of the people in Japan do not even participate in sexual activity, which is a very scary anomaly, because it's. I mean, that's supposed to be something like eating, sleeping. One of the major functions of being a human is sex. In Japanese, 25% of them are not even doing it. So that means that there's a major problem that's been in our culture, and that's, if that move spreads to South Korea, that'll be very bad for them as well. And that's definitely a result from the United States' influence on them and this high-tech era that Japan's moved into, where they're 30, 40 years more advanced than the United States, but on a lot of social issues, they're 50 years behind a lot of the world. I mean, Japan has a serious mental health crisis. They have many serious crises right now. And you have people working 16 hours a day and stuff to survive in Japan, which that's not a sign of a country that is humanitarian and good for its people, that people have to work their entire lives just to make it. 8 hours is one thing, which is not really a reality. It's no longer a reality in the United States anymore, that a person on a low wage can make it on 8 hours, 8 hours a day, 40-hour a week, and actually have a family. Maybe if they're single and are very thrifty, they could actually afford a place to their own and bills and everything on a regular pay. Not talk about professional pay. We're talking about what a regular person could get easily, or not easily, but a regular person could get without years of college and years of or a very rare job that only 1 in 1,000 people are going to get. But in the United States, Japan, a few other countries, that's becoming definitely the reality, is that people are working their entire lives away, and that's not a sign of a human advanced country socially. In Russia, people work an average of 40 hours, which on paper sounds the same as us, because we're supposed to be working 40 hours, but there it's actually true. And they actually, there's a saying in Russia, is working like an American, because they believe Americans is to be slaved away for nothing, really. They find Americans' lives to be rather dull and they're not envious at all of many Americans' lives. They might be envious somewhat to some of the more flashy things, maybe some of the more shallow Russians, but I think the majority of them are not. They realize what they have there is pretty good, especially nowadays. Maybe 30 years ago, they couldn't say the same thing, but today, it's a much different story. We have Putin right now is the most hated human being probably by the New World Order, or if not most, he's the most powerful threat to them as a human being, besides literally God himself. Besides God himself, Putin is the biggest threat to the New World Order, and that's why you have these people saying of pretty much, you have these people that were running for this 2016 election here in the United States that were saying that we're not afraid of a nuclear war with Russia. The insanity that is. To talk about millions, if not billions of people would be affected in such a scenario. And they're talking about this just like it's another option. No option off the table. That seems to be a code word that comes up and up again. Is that, we'll take no option off the table with Iran. We'll take no option off the table with whatever. And then all these buzzwords that they put out there. And then there's code words for really awful things. No option off the table means everything up to nuclear weapons can be used. The red line pretty much means if they do cross that, it's an initiation of war, and that we will start a preemptive strike possibly. And they kept using that word preemptive, which I think a lot of Americans just gloss right over it, which means that unprovoked pretty much, or a massive a massive retaliation that's not merited by the action before usually. Is usually what they're talking about when they're crossing the red line. And they kept saying that over and over again a few years ago when they were really talking about going in there against Assad. And they just did it more secretly. And they decided that they wanted to do a highly publicized war at the beginning. But wait a few years and then they'll just go and take out Syria and Iran at the same time, or at least try to. And that's the reality of the situation now, is that we have many different countries, many different places where a major war could break out at some point between Russia and the United States. And we have the Ukrainian scenario, we have the South Korean scenario, where the countries come to back up each Korea in a war between those two. There's a scenario with Iran, Syria, of course, that eventually Russia comes in to defend their allies. There's the Venezuela and Colombia scenario even, which that's been a very hot front for a while. That border right there has been closed down recently, and the Colombia-Venezuelan border, one country, Colombia, is on the side of the United States, and Russia is back Venezuela. So you have these two pretty powerful North, Western, South American countries that they start fighting at each other. That would be a pretty ugly war just to that. But if those two come in to back each other's ally or back their allies, it would be a very ugly scenario. There's also, we have other places where there's a lot of tensions between countries bordering each other, but those just seem to be the main ones at this point. We have, in 2016, we still have the Ukrainian civil war going on, and with the United States switching their military uniforms from desert to woodland is a little bit concerning, because it looks like they might be thinking down the road of possibly fighting a war in the woodlands of Eastern Europe between them and Russia. Now, I think this is my thoughts on the possibility of a potential war between the United States and Russia, is that the United States might try to provoke a war with Russia and might try very hard to provoke a war with Russia, but Russia would take a lot of provocation to actually act on this provocation, because they've had already a ton of provocations in Ukraine, a lot of provocations in Syria, that they could have acted on if they were truly looking for war. And it proves that Russia is not looking for war because they didn't act on those provocations. And I think that it would take literally the attack on Russia for Russia to join in. It would literally take something like a bombing inside of Russia by the United States in order for the United States to act upon that. And ultimately, what comes down to when you talk about Russia and the United States, it seems that there's really a huge tension between political Zionism and Russia. And Israel, being not too far from Russia, and is very close to where a lot of Russia's goals and where Russia would like to change things in the Middle East, Israel's interfering with it. And Israel's attacking Syria, which Syria is one of their biggest allies in the world. And Iran is one of the closest allies in the world. Right there, you have two of Russia's closest allies right there. Russia has a military base in Syria, not too far away from Israel. And Israel, I think, is one of the countries, if not the country that's most mad at Russia for their change of direction that happened in the 2000s, the 90s and the 2000s, after the crazy period in the 90s where Yeltsin was the president and they had the country being sold off and the people were in terrible poverty. Israel is the one that's probably shaking their heads quite a bit at Putin, because ultimately it seems to be that they're the ones that, when it comes to the foreign policy, are really influencing the United States, and they're the ones that are heavily influencing the United States government. And you see that a lot of the narratives when it comes to the war with Syria and Iran is to protect Israel. And you saw that Hillary Clinton, when revealed in that email, that they wanted to take out Syria to protect Israel, because that seems to be that's that underlying thing with all this. And then when people talk about U.S. imperialism, need to look at Israel, who are not just, what some people that might criticize Israel, but don't go too far. They don't go far enough to expose the malignant nature that Israel is to humanity, to everyone in the world, to the world, the malignant nature that is Israel. That they're not just a satellite of the United States. They're not even probably at the same level. But you're talking about a country that is higher up than the United States ultimately, and a lot closer to ultimately the source of the world's instability and the world's huge threat, which is the New World Order, and that this all-encompassing government could take over the planet, ruled by the most richest people on the planet in a fascist state, with no liberties for the people, and people would just be labor units. Israel is very close to the people that actually control this New World Order, while the United States is just really is a bit further down the strings of puppets. And then you go even further down to Saudi Arabia, for example, was just a puppet of the United States. And then you go to Turkey and your smaller countries and Qatar, but ultimately Israel is pretty close to the puppet masters. Because when you look at who Israel was made for, just look at the Balfour Declaration. It was made for the Rothschilds. As you could see, as the Britain wrote that letter to the Rothschilds promising that land back in 1917. Nowadays, a lot of the Middle East now bows down to Israel, and it's really different from the narrative they always try to spread to us on the media in the United States, that they're trying to say that Israel's threatened by their neighbors and that all their countries practically around them hate them, when it's really only 2 countries oppose them in the Middle East. Well, 3. There's Syria, Iran, and Yemen. That's it. You have Assad. You have Rouhani, and then you have al-Houthi, and that's it. And really, Yemen is at the point where the Houthis they have power, but it's heavily contested from the former puppet dictatorship that was the leader Hadi that used to be there, that let the United States do drone strikes, and he also oversaw a country where extremists flourished, which ultimately, what are Islamic extremists? They are puppets of Zionism to destabilize countries that actually truly, destabilize countries that have governments that truly oppose Zionism, and they're not really Islamic, they're Wahhabist. And what was Wahhabism? It's like, Wahhabism is like the Westboro Baptist Church to Christianity. It is not reflective at all of the rest of the religion, and they're they use the name only. But the Wahhabists, a lot of times, are preaching things that are completely opposite of what the Quran preaches. And you look at what Wahhabism is, it comes from Saudi Arabia, which Saudi Arabia is a complete sellout. That's completely sold out to Israel. They have land that is disputed with Israel, but they just let Israel take it, these islands, because they're not going to contest the people. They're not going to contest the head of the dog that they are the tail of. Saudi Arabia is 100. They act like it. They sometimes, even Saudi Arabia, Turkey, let's say at times that they're for the Palestinian people or whatever, and that the Palestinian people are in their interest. And Qatar, and sometimes even goes down this route, or even the United Arab or Bahrain or whatever, start saying, "Oh yeah, we believe the Palestinian people should be helped by us or whatever," but they do nothing to help the Palestinian people, and they trade with Israel. You know that one of the top 10 traders with Israel is Turkey. Erdogan, however you want to pronounce his name, is really irrelevant. He's been the leader there for 18 years, and now recently this coup happened against him. And all these people on the internet started saying, seem to have these weird opinions. They believe that, and I think some people have believed that they actually take his fake anti-Zionism that he supposedly, that he uses every now and then to get political leverage, as that's what he truly represents. No. He is a Zionist sellout dictator that censors the media inside of his country, is 100% brutal. And you see what happened to those people that applauded the coup. They're all getting beheaded and stuff like that. And I think Gulen is probably some kind of controlled opposition to some degree or another, because why the hell would an enemy to a pro-NATO dictator be right here in the United States? They would have made sure that they would just said that they would just let him stay in Turkey and face whatever that state could throw at him, whatever the government, whatever their forces could throw at, or whatever their military could throw at Gulen, and he probably would have been arrested and put in jail, or had to leave and go somewhere else if he was actually true opposition. But he's probably not. It's very interesting though, the whole how things have fell into place right there, and there's a lot of this seems to be a very defining moment though, because I don't know how it could happen. I don't think it will happen, because at this point, this man has done so many horrible actions, the Turkish president, that if he was to turn it around right now, would the people accept it? Because a lot of people in Turkey, they're very angry at him, and have gotten very tired of what he's done for the last 18 years, and I think that he's near being overthrown. This coup is just the start of it. By next year, I think that there'll be a very high chance that he'll be out of power, because in 2013 there were huge protests against him, and with all the stuff that's happened and where he's been practically, I mean, last year he was practically shown to be supporting ISIS openly. The whole world pretty much discovered this. This is what, a lot of people will say that if you're when you're talking about Saudi Arabia supporting ISIS, or United States supporting ISIS, or even Israel supporting ISIS, they'll call you a conspiracy theorist, and they'll go down that route. But Turkey, there's no more of that, because it's now practically a mainstream fact. And the conspiracy theory about, I think they're never going to go as far and anytime soon as saying Israel supported or supports ISIS. But the mainstream news, they'll use Turkey, or at least they might say Turkey, because they're they're way down the puppet strings. They're a very small player in all of it. But then when you start getting into Saudi Arabia, and then further up into the dirty trio that is Saudi Arabia, United States, and Israel, and what they do in the Middle East to the Middle East, and what the United States and Israel do to the world, Israel, with all the shady shit that they've done over the years, with assassination of Iranian nuclear scientists, and with the assassinations that they've done around the world, and bombings, and all kinds of really messed up shit. The Mossad is one of the most. It is made the most sneakiest and most cunning military or intelligence agency in the world. And the Mossad, they're always they got people everywhere. Hugo Chavez said that they got people in the Caribbean that were trying to kill him, and they got people in South America. They got people probably over even in Far East of Asia. They got people in Russia, that's for sure. They got people in Europe. They got people in Africa. Israel's everywhere. And I know it sounds like, this is the part of the show. It's like there's probably some people that are already started to tune out and like, oh, here he goes again. Talk about Israel. But, after a certain time of being on the internet and actually being at the front lines, the keyboard trench battles, you start to realize that, they have trolls all over the internet. They pay people specifically just to counter people like us when we bring the facts. And they bring up the same bullshit every time. You start talking about how they're racist and how they have a racist society inside their country. And they start talking about the Arab Israelis and these people that's completely sold out, and how they get treated a little bit better than the ones that didn't completely sell out. But they're still treated lower. It's like, you look at the facts, unless you are a white pro-Zionist Jew inside of Israel, you don't get treated at first-class status. Christian, no, you don't get treated the same. Black, you don't get treated the same. You're not supportive of the government in Israel, you don't get treated the same. You're Muslim, you don't get treated the same. You get way down on the list. I mean, I would really feel bad for someone that's a African Palestinian or African Muslim living in Palestine. A black person living in Palestine that's Muslim and opposes the Netanyahu regime by protesting at the fence, is actually an active protester. That guy probably wouldn't last too long before he gets shot by one of the IDF. And they got the JIDF that'll go for that. They are a thinly veiled. They act like they're just an organization that protects Jewish people in general on the internet, but they just protect Israel. You go 2 seconds. I dare you, put some negative comments about Israel on the JIDF Facebook page. See how long before you get blocked right off of there. And of course, they use the IDF part of it. And then a lot of the JIDF content that they put on Facebook is just denouncing us supposed conspiracy theorists, us fucking tinfoil hatters is what they call, that's what they think of us. Because we actually know our shit, and we actually know what's going on. We don't believe the stupid mainstream media at this point, or even at the alternative media, that the fake alternative media, the Alex Jones and Sanko Gur at this point, who they get in their little tussle at the RNC. It's really good entertainment, and that's about it. To watch the two fatties right there fight. Alex Jones. Yeah, the funny thing is that one of the guys from the Young Turks was calling Alex Jones fat or stuff like that, calling him a fat pig. And it's funny because they don't realize that their guy is not in the greatest shape either. I mean, I really doubt that what's under that the Cyril Figgis vest. If you watch Archer, who Cyril Figgis is. That's kind of clothes that Sanko Gur wears. He wears the Cyril Figgis vest. That's actually muscle under there. He's just a fat guy. Now, there's nothing wrong with being fat, but if you're a shithead like those two, I might just throw it in the insults towards them. There's a million other insults about the bullshit that they spew out on there. I mean, now, Alex Jones in 2001 would say that that there's no point in voting elections. Both parties are rigged, the elections are rigged, and Muslims are being used as patsies. They're not actual terrorists. The government is the ones that are actually supportive of terrorists. And then 2016 now is Muslims are terrorists. Vote for Trump. He doesn't sound any different than a Fox News host. It's ridiculous. Alex Jones, what he's became over the years, and you start talking. He gets real uncomfortable every time someone mentions Israel, or really starts mentioning the vast scope of the Israeli influence on the Western world. And what I mean by the Western world, the Western governments, their influence on the French government and the British government and the United States government, and even governments that are not really in the Western world but are pro-West, so the Turkish government and the Qatari government and all these other, all these governments that Israel seems to have a lot of influence over, or not in their pocketbooks. The United States, with AIPAC, the biggest lobby in the United States is AIPAC. And you got these people that will tell you, they'll fight with you so hard, thinking that the NRA is the biggest lobby in the United States. If the NRA had as much money as the AIPAC did, there would be no talk about this gun control and stuff like that. That's how much money AIPAC can pump into these politicians, and they take them, and the power they have. They can take these politicians to Israel, and they pretty much give them their, they pretty much swear them into the club. These congressmen now, how many congressmen in this country actually oppose Zionism? I don't think any of them. We don't have Ron Paul anymore. We don't have, way back, Mike Gravel might have been he was in the Senate back in the 60s and 70s and the 80s. It's been a while since he was actually up there in D.C. Nowadays, we got these jokes of people that are supposed to be the opposition to the established D.C. You have your Ted Cruz. That was for a while considered like some kind of opposition, or Rand Paul, who is known to be pro-Israel. So, and we have, at this point, this election, we have two candidates that have the same views pretty much on foreign policy, same views about Israel, same views about the banks and what we should do with the banks, and same views of how we should treat the mega corporations, keep catering to them, and same views of how we should treat the poor, which is pretty much fuck them. Is what their view about the poor is. It's a continuation of this fascist police state going forward to the point where it'll be a military junta, and there won't be, people thought that was the difference between the United States and other countries, that we don't have the military on the street harassing people. But we will have the military on the street harassing people very shortly. And it will happen around the same time World War III starts. And when the United States goes into Iran, that'll be World War III, and there will be a very big lockdown of this country. And a lot of Americans are gonna be very happy with it because they've gotten all to become security freaks. I mean, I don't know. I blame the internet. I blame the internet for the security. Everybody turned into security freaks because they got all this kinky handcuff shit, and then all this getting tied to the bed and stuff like that. Now it's fucking ingrained in their mindsets because they watch too much of this. Americans watch too much porn, and they get into all this kinky shit. And then since that's what they watch, it slowly ingrains themselves into their minds. I'm joking, but I just thought that there would be a little bit of comedy into these topics of. It sucks to watch Americans go to sleep. That's what's happening. It seems like Americans are just not quite as awake as they used to be. And this in general, just how they go through life now. I've seen this young generation. You know, they're on their phones the entire time, and all they're thinking about is their crappy, their false, their supposed popularity on the social media or whatnot. And even the ones, and that are supposed to be the ones that are better than that is like, oh, I'm not doing that because I'm spending time getting educated or whatnot. Well, they believe everything that's in their fucking textbooks and the supposed goody two shoes that, oh yeah, I got a 4.25 GPA. You know what? Guess what? I was practically one of those people. I actually had a 4.55 GPA, and something like that. Who gives a fuck at this point? I mean. It was nice. It was nice having those nice numbers, and it might set myself up for some make my life a little bit easier because I took high school seriously. But at the same time, a major cause I was looking at was actually educating other young people about what's going on in the world because that's what's going to be really important. And you have these goody two shoes, of course. They're like, I'm focused on getting the diploma or whatever, and they don't realize that the economy that they're looking at in the future is going to be garbage, and it's going to be no freedom in this country, and they're reading textbooks with a bunch of phony information, especially when you talk about social studies and stuff like that. And people that, and hopefully these people won't get suckered into something like becoming a analyst for the United States government or something like that, and then they're ended up helping do the United States government's dirty deeds. Yeah, I feel like that right there. We should have like a break and start playing "Dirty Deeds" by AC/DC. Yeah, I wish I had like on the soundtrack. Where it's like have different buttons with all different play different songs. I used to have that on my. If you listened back on when I was on Stable Radio, which is up to June 2015. May 2015. I was on Stable Radio, and I actually used to have a little soundtrack. I used to play like actual songs at the beginning of the shows, but the thing is that probably because we didn't have too much of stuff on YouTube, is probably why we could get away with it. But on YouTube, they had all like copyright rules, and so they can't play like Guns N' Roses or whatever. We actually had that. We had Welcome to the Jungle. But now we use Mortal Technique because Mortal Technique is actually, a small artist. And because we had that little situation where we were able to get his permission for his music, to use his music. I think, I remember we used to have Payday Monsanto, who's another artist, smaller, and would let people use their music. But, Payday Monsanto, actually, I know him, so I know, of course, he would personally give me permission because I've interviewed him twice. It's been it's been July 27th, so 2 years after last time I interviewed Payday Monsanto. It seemed like too long. I know I've been saying that. I feel like I should be getting around to that and having a follow-up interview because even though I don't agree with a lot of stuff that Payday Monsanto has to say, he's still a very interesting guest to have on, and pretty talented musician, I have to say. And it's kind of funny too. I mean, is that he's on? I'm pretty sure he's on one of those like bulletins or whatever. That ADL, they have like they have like profiles they put of people that they don't like, and I think Peyton Monsanto's one of them. Of course, because Peyton Monsanto is very hardcore anti-Zionist. He's been in this truther movement for a while. I mean, way before a lot of some of the people that came into the truther movement more recently. I mean, he's been in since '09 or whatever. Which, you know, there was kind of a, of course, you could say, well, Alex Jones stuff has been in since the '90s, but Alex Jones has been he's ultimately a sellout. I mean, there's Jesse Ventura. He could go. I mean, he's been in for a while, but back in the '90s, he was a governor, so he wasn't really doing that kind of stuff like what he does today, radio and his Facebook and all that. And back then, he was the governor of Minnesota. You know, the alternative media. I think that we need to focus a little bit more on. The problem is that some of the people in alternative media like to fight with each other in the lower levels of alternative media. That's why we don't get too far, is it? Because we get caught up in our own drama, and it ultimately starts screwing with a lot of things. And the whole drama that it seems to be a lot of times over little Facebook arguments and whatnot, which a lot of times is just a failure to accurately read what somebody else wanted to convey, and or it's over something silly. You know, it seems like something about it. Facebook. The truth, some of the truth is on there at these lower levels. You know, you need they need to stop wanting to get themselves into drama, because you know, as fun as it is at times to have our little rivalries or whatever, which I don't even really see it that way. Not really rivalries, but have our little, you know, it's not even really fun, but as interesting, I guess, as this drama is sometimes, we need to just avoid it, because we have the mainstream media, they stay united, and those people, they continue still have thousands and thousands of people watching and eating up all of what they're saying. I mean, the CNN, MSNBC, Fox don't get tons and tons of viewers. I mean, some of the shows on MSNBC have really dropped off on viewership, and that's probably because they had some more radical hosts and stuff like that in the 2000s, the people that actually spoke a little bit of the truth in the 2000s. They got all rid of all of them. Now people are pretty upset, and they just stopped watching because the MSNBC has turned into a cesspool for some of the worst, most boring hosts that just spew out the most classic Starbucks liberal stuff. You know, people are gonna people go back at me and they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, you're probably just some conservative or you're one of those Trump supporters or whatever." No, I don't like Starbucks liberals because they pretend like they're fighting on the revolutionary cause or whatnot, and they're fighting about which people can go to the bathroom. And they're fighting these silly issues they're put out there by the media just to divide us. They're completely blinded. They're not fighting the real issues, and and one of the major issues that I take on is Israel and our special relationship that the United States and Israel have. You know, that's one of the major issues, and then the Federal Reserve and this banking system that people don't even realize that our banks that are that we use today, our banks, those bankers that control those banks are the same bankers that funded the Nazis just a few, 70 or so years ago. And the United States has turned into a Nazi Germany, they have a military machine like Nazi Germany did that just is absolutely incredible in their power and what they can do to a country that is no longer singing the tune of Uncle Sam. And I mean, there's Uncle Sam, but I feel like there needs to be a character to represent Israel, because I mean, without it sounding too anti-Jewish, because it's like people will say, "Oh, well, you could call him Shlomo Heberstein or something like that." I'm like, no, it sounds like a fucking Nazi or something like that hates all Jewish people now. But I mean, Uncle Ben. Well, Uncle Ben, isn't that's a rice the rice brand, isn't it? So Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, I was like thinking, but Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, he's almost became like a classic character of Israel at this point because he's been there 25 years, line and line and line at different points of the government. Now he's actually the prime minister of Israel, and he has the highest position of Israel. But I mean, you know what? Maybe Ariel Sharon, because he just was a despicable individual as well, and I don't know what to call him. Does anybody know the Yiddish word for, or not Yiddish, Hebrew word for uncle? And then we could put like Uncle Ariel, or maybe what was that? One guy, Megan, the one that was the prime minister back in the 80s of Israel. Share with things, but I can't go to the chat room because the chat room has been having problems where I get like closed down on Skype if I go over to it. Sucks. Well, anyways, wow, time's really been going by when we're just blab about start going into a little bit of an Israel rant, go back, talk about a little bit about the Cold War, and this time, the American people nor the Russian people really want. I mean, a lot of them are just saying, "Oh, not this again." Especially a lot of the Russian people, because they were pitted against the American people, and a lot of the Russian people were just tired of war after the World War II. And today, they just know that they know it's not the American people love them. They know it's the American government. There are some Russians that believe that American people are responsible for this to some extent because we don't do anything. And they got somewhat of a point. Because Americans are some of the most conformist people on the planet when it comes to the government, that what they allow. At least other places protest and stuff like that. Here, we have people that are talking about how they'll run over protesters. And at the same time, those same people wonder how a guy ran over all those people in nice France. How could someone humanly do that? Well, you're talking about how you'll run over protesters over here. I mean, it's definitely a different idea of, as people run to support their corrupt government and run to the support of the police, or, in general. Not every single police officer is a complete terrible individual. But the police, what they represent at this point is the law enforcement for the fascist state, that is the government. And I think that anybody that wants to truly help their community can do it in other ways besides join the police. I think we need to do a lot more of building stronger communities and make the police no longer have that argument that they're helping troubled communities. We need to actually get back to a sense of community that we've kind of lost recently. People don't really talk to their neighbors. How many people actually know their neighbors? How many people actually when they're in the store and they see their neighbors, actually start a conversation with them, rather than some people awkwardly go to their phone because they don't want to have a conversation with these people. And that's part of the problem. And we're divided, we fall. That's the fascist states of America of the future. I'm thinking, we have the United States of America as a thing of the past. Pretty much at this point, as we know, the United States of America. I mean, we could call it the future thing. I mean, it'll be the United FEMA districts of America, and instead of land of the free and home of the brave, I guess we could have the land of the thieves and the home of the. What could be the land of the thieves and the home of the lame? Man, how about the home of the? I don't got anything else at the second. I'm thinking so. You know what? Just land of the thieves and the home of the enslaved. There we go. Divided we fall. Divided we fall together, divided we fall individually, we're enslaved. I don't know, something like that. There's a few slogans for the future America to be used right there. or you got to put in somewhere the Israeli effect to America. It's when Benjamin Netanyahu, maybe that's how it'll just go down in the end. But Benjamin Netanyahu announces that he decided to put some more settlements up, and he's going to do them a lot further west than before. That's going to confuse people. And he says, yes, we're actually going to take in our occupied territories of the United States, we're going to put a lot of settlements over there. Oh, yeah, by the way, those are now occupied territories. And we're going to call it, the West Bank will no longer be called the West Bank. That'll be the United States. It'll be the new West Bank. And I don't know. And then we decided to pick our place with the worst living conditions inside the United States to be the New Gaza. And that's what it's going to be named. It's going to be New Gaza, and that'll be Florida. And actually, it's got to be something small, though. Florida's a pretty large place. It's got to be like, but you know what? It's like, I was thinking of, a small place like Rhode Island or Connecticut. They're not terribly shitty places. Like Florida, and we have some crazy shit going on down here. It's like Gaza has to be made the worst place, one of the worst places in the world to live in, just because of the fact that they're all herded into like one city. And every time that Israel decides to bomb Gaza, they kill so many because they're all herded in one area practically. They're just like one bombing zone. There's nowhere really to hide in Gaza City. And what you're going to do, jump in the ocean? I mean, what we need to get the attention of people about the whole situation over there in Israel-Palestine, what we need some comedians and some stand-up, and we need good. We're going to bring back also at the same time the good old 80s stand-up. We're going to have we need somebody like Andrew Dice Clay, who can really ram it home all the stuff. Where the fuck they're going to go? They're going to jump in the ocean and be the next Michael Phelps? Is that what they're supposed to do? I know it's not a funny matter, but I cracked myself up with my Andrew Dice Clay impersonation right there. Wake up and smell the fucking toast. I think it's pretty good, actually. I mean, it's like, think whatever you want of Andrew Dice Clay, but I can do a pretty good impression, I think. I got to throw in a little bit of comedy in there. I mean, some of these radio shows are pretty fucking stale. I'm not saying UCY, but I'm saying just in the alternative media. Some of them just, they're doing good. They're trying to do a good thing, but you got to put a little bit of entertainment. You got to get some of the regular people, and because what we're supposed to do, we're just supposed to fucking preach to the same people. They already fucking know. How about try to teach some people that don't fucking know what's going on? See, threw the impression in there. I'm trying to go to the chat room and see if, because I feel like right now, either the chat room is ignoring me, they're just talking about whatever they are talking about. They are loving what I'm doing, or they fucking hate these the way the direction I went with this show today. Because I don't have the chat room to even interact with, so I'm just like, it's my own thing, and it's a pretty vague topic. I can just go and go way off of anchor. That's the thing, is that I need like a fucking anchor to actually keep me on topic. I should probably do notes and stuff like that, but that's not my style. My style is just completely, to go where the radio show takes me. But, oh yeah. Well, actually, I see somebody actually mentioned it. Not to mention my Andrew Dice Clay routine or whatever. That was Andrew Dice Clay impression I did, which is decent, I guess. At least I saw. At least nobody. When I got to the UCY radio chat room, that there's not people saying, "Oh, what the fuck he's doing" or whatever. But yeah, the thing is that I've actually done. I've used to do a little bit more, try to stay on topic and try to stick more to what I was actually prepared for the show and not go, off the cuff. But, off the cuff, that's where you get the passion. That's where you get the, and some people just couldn't do it. Some people cannot go off the cuff. Some people can't talk for one thing. Some people can't talk for 2 hours. Not everyone has the radio personality. But I think that I think that's how you get some of these funnier shows at the same time. You get these shows that actually get a wide range of emotions, or at least get a wide range of things happen. You get to spread knowledge, you make some people laugh, and you actually bring up a good show at the same time. But yes, shout out to the chat room for actually this time. Actually, I get there and they're actually talking about something related to what I'm talking about. Let's see, second Cold War that's now underway. It's weird though, because it's like I remember back like 2012 when this all started going down, the tension started going back. I remember there was like some meeting that went bad. Yeah, there was the famous meeting thing with Putin and Obama where they're not looking at each other and whatnot. And I remember there was like a hockey game that Putin played in, and they try to make him look kind of ridiculous because that he's a 6-year-old president of a country and he's playing hockey. And he's actually doing so. I find it kind of funny that's their major criticism all the times of people like who Chavez and Putin, because they have hobbies that they actually participate in. And Putin, apparently I've seen his moves. He's not too bad of a player for being 60 goddamn years old. I mean, not everybody can even skate on the ice at 60, and he it looks like he has a little bit of moves. He definitely would be. I think he definitely might have been a lot better player as when he was younger. Maybe not an NHL player or anything like that, but it definitely shows that he seems to have a little bit of skill in a lot of stuff. I think this guy the Formula One racer and flying jet, and there was a picture of him doing whale harpoon and all that. And it's funny how here in the West you find that ridiculous that they have this guy seems to do a little bit of everything, while we have our president Obama. What does he do? He appears on The View. I mean, that's why they think a lot of Russians. That's one of the major things they think is like, how the hell do we let this complete sissy be a president? It's a complete, to them they find him as a complete beta man, complete feminized man. I mean, while Putin over there, he does all he does. But all that aside, after that hockey game, then it started pouring in. Oh, Putin is on the opposite side of us in the Korea situation. Putin's on the opposite side of us on the Iranian situation. He wants Iran to develop nuclear weapons. Remember that hysteria that happened in 2012 with all that talk about the nuclear weapons of Iran? I mean, it really got really scary at that point, because that's when I think Netanyahu showed up or maybe it was a little bit before. I was like 2010 when Netanyahu showed up to the UN with the cartoon drawing. With the big bomb on it. I mean, that was a pretty hilariously juvenile moment at the UN. He's like, look, America's big bomb, scary bomb. Watch out, Iran's building it. And he had to say, of course, for the 150th time over the last 25 years, that Iran 6 months away from the nuclear weapon. They're this close away from enriching uranium and putting it into a nuclear bomb. Oh no, we're going to get blown up. And scaring people, saying, oh yeah, Israel's going to get blown up. You're all going to be bad Christians if you let Israel get blown up. And, of course, Americans all take the bait and are like, oh no, Iran's going to nuke Israel. The evil Ayatollah is building nuclear weapons. Everybody's all scared about it. And in 2012, I mean, it got everybody, was really thinking that we would possibly go to war with Iran really soon. And, it decided looked like they're not going to probably do it in the Obama administration. They'll probably wait till the Hillary Clinton administration to probably actually go in. I mean, Hillary Clinton did say in 2007 that she would bomb Iran. Way back, she said that to AIPAC when she was looking to become the 44th president. Now she'll be just the 45th president. She had to wait a little bit longer to get what she wanted. Now she's going to be the president of the United States within a few months. And when she's president of the United States, there's going to be a war with Iran. And it doesn't matter, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, there'll be war with Iran. But Hillary Clinton, there'll be war with Iran because she said there'll be fucking war with Iran. So, you know. Also, by the way, I see some stuff in the chat room about a call number. Unfortunately, I had no way to pick up the call because I don't have the full version of Skype, and we don't have a I don't have a way to do conference calls or whatever, or actually to taking a call for a conference call. So we don't. If you want to participate, just stay in the chat room. We're looking at the fix this problem. I mean, this is how it's been for a couple months. If you haven't noticed that, why there hasn't been a caller since June. I think June 5th was the last show that I actually had a call in. I had on a call number, but it's whatever. Everybody was freaking out in 2012, though, about the Iran, and everybody was freaking. And then they go on, and then 2013, it's like, oh, look at he was supporting this, Hugo Chavez, who they tried to make look like such a bad guy here in the United States. And if you're talking to the right-wing, Cuban community or whatever, or the right-wing Latin community down here in Florida, Hugo Chavez, they consider him to be such a horrible person or whatnot, and they know nothing about him. And a lot of times, teenagers say all this stuff about him, and they just say whatever their parents fucking repeated to them. It's disgusting to watch. Teenagers have no knowledge about politics. They knack on me because I put the facts out there, put my ducks in a fucking row, and they start knacking on me because of that. And then because Hugo Chavez is a terrible person, he's a dictator. And then you ask them what they actually know about Hugo Chavez, and they know nothing. They just know what their parents fucking told them. And and here's the thing that I was fortunate enough to have is that I didn't have what some of these people that had for dumbass parents. Sorry, but at least in these respects, they might have been good parents otherwise, but what they fed their children was complete garbage. And I don't know what I went to look in the chat room, I see cheese. Well, it's not cheese. Now you're going to get me all off topic. But you know what? Here's something for them is that, they'll probably start going into all the thing. Oh, they don't got food. They don't got whatever because Maduro's not letting them have that. No. And also these food shortages are supposed to be, so crippling to Venezuela right now. I just talked with my correspondent down there in Venezuela. He said the situation's stabilizing. Nothing like what the mainstream media had to say. You know what? That's one of the great things about Facebook because I can talk with people from all around the world. And the power situation is now over. They don't have a power rationing, and food or gasoline situation is now normalizing. Which it is pretty unfortunate. At one point, the gasoline there might have been some shortages in a country that has so much gasoline, and that's the problem. Is that the Maduro is not quite fit to lead the country, but it wasn't really an ideal situation on how he got the power. It was because Chavez died. I mean, or Chavez was sick, and he pretty much said, he had to pick somebody. Maduro will be the person that I hope you guys support in the case that I fall out of power, and then Maduro was elected president. But, I think the PSUV is going to put somebody that's more favorable in 2018. And, people say, well, they can't wait to 2018. They're starving. The situation's stabilizing. A lot of all this hyper-sensationalized journalism that's coming out there, or I shouldn't say journalism, because it's just a PR campaign for our government to say that they need Capriles or something like that to be their next president, which Capriles is a United States poster boy fascist that supports terrorists inside of Venezuela that use innocent people as human shields and stuff like that, because they killed 43 people, or Leopoldo was responsible for the deaths of 43 people in Venezuela using his right-wing goons. And who ultimately finances the Venezuelan opposition? Israel. So now I can see why there's this very strong animosity towards Chavez in the media. And yes, Chavez was a little bit, it's a funny thing to Americans, you might have seen him a little eccentric. But down there in Venezuela, he just had the passion. That's what the Latin passion. He was, Americans have their own little cultural bias of what a leader should be because our leader can't barely make it through a speech. Obama stuttering and saying, "I like to." I try to do my Obama impersonation. I would like to express that this speech is will be very boring and the bankers that let me express. I would like to be clear that the bankers that control me wrote this speech for me to tell to you. And yeah, Chavez. He definitely, he's singing at times and dancing. I remember that one time he was dancing in the rain. That showed it all. And this is after he had been through the whole battle with cancer, and he was running for re-election in 2012. You saw how much his people loved him, the energy in the crowd. When he went out to a speech, it seemed like thousands went out there, and it was a legitimate passion. It wasn't like they were forced to be there. These people that absolutely were emphatic supporters of Hugo Chavez, and you couldn't really find that same thing. For example, the Colombian president, in the neighboring country of Santos, he doesn't get that when he goes out for a speech because most of the Colombian poor do not like him, and it's really more like the higher Colombian middle class and the Colombian rich that like Santos, the president of Colombia, who's a United States puppet, and is he's kind of like not quite the hardcore. There was like the hard ass Alvaro Uribe, who was known to be involved in the paramilitary and would just kill his opponents using the paramilitary. Yeah. I got the comment that my Obama sounded like Nixon. I could hear it a little, but if you think about it, they don't sound. I mean, it sounds somewhat like Obama. I could sort of get the voice. And come on, I've done enough impressions for today. I can get the. I don't. You gotta give me credit on the impressions I can do. So, going on into the show, and we are already at 10:17 Eastern time over here. It's this is the last day of July already, so that means we don't have too long left of the Obama administration, and then we'll be into the Clinton administration, and it's going to be a little bit scary then, because then that's when really some of the major pieces of the plan are going to come together. At least that's how I see it. And there's going to be the major war. World War III, martial law. We're talking about all that kind of stuff not too far away once Hillary Clinton's the president. And, a lot of people are going on and on and on about it. A lot of young generation are like, oh, look how scary Trump is. Look at, and they've fallen right for the boogeyman scenario. They're blind. They're so blinded. They believe Trump's a scary boogeyman and we must vote for Clinton to get away or to get away from Trump. And you hear what they have to say on the important issues, it's the same shit. They can't decipher actual talking points from, just the whatever filler they put in there. Trump has a different way. He's an actor. What proves somewhat that Trump that there's this election's rigged and Trump is not thinking about winning. He's not thinking about winning and support American people. He's been on Alex Jones' InfoWars. If he's trying to make himself look like a sane candidate, why would he be with Alex Jones? Also, why is Trump? I mean, you see the stuff that it's all piles up, all the stuff that he did at times. At the end, people will be glad that Hillary Clinton's the president because they see Trump with that one time when he did the mocking the say old reporter, or the other time with the quote about Megyn Kelly on her period or whatever, and then there's the quotes about the blacks or the quotes about Mexicans and bringing crime and stuff like that. So. It's right now. It's all a major. It's like our election it's very strange. 2016. And people actually are falling for this show right now. I mean, I'm more interested at this point when it comes to elections wise. I mean, I'm just waiting for 2018 Colombia and see what goes on there. I would like to see who's either the next puppet that the United States is going to use to control Colombia, or maybe, just maybe, some kind of extraordinary scenario is going to happen, like what happened in 1998 in Venezuela with Hugo Chavez's election. Maybe the Colombia's Hugo Chavez has arrived. I don't know. It's possible. I really hope, because Colombia has been for a long time affected by the United States foreign policy, and now they became the the hottest point of South America is right there at that border. And that's where some of my family lives, not too far away from the border in Colombia and Venezuela, and they have to live right by where possibly a major war could break out. But Colombia needs to get away, and the thing is, Colombia has really suffering right now. 8 times the food prices have recently went up 8 times. They have this terrible inflation problem, and they're selling off big parts of their country right now to foreign corporations. Their country is really bad shape, and all the media in Colombia likes to talk about how bad Venezuela is, or whatever, how corrupt Maduro is. But the truth is, Colombia is what a lot of stuff that they're saying Venezuela is. Colombia is worse, and right now they're being used, and they're still being used. And there's United States troops right there inside of Colombia, ready to pounce on Venezuela or Quito, with Ecuador. And now, unfortunately, also Peru has also fallen to the leadership of pretty much a United States businessman, Pablo Kaczynski, who is a Polish-Jewish guy who was in the United States for 30 years in corporate America, and now somehow he's qualified to be the president of Peru. It was that, or the daughter of a former fascist dictator that was really close in bed with the United States. That would have been Keiko Fujimori, which I'm pretty sure she's like a quarter Japanese or something like that, or he was like a half Japanese. I don't know how these Asians are the leaders of a South American country. It looks very weird. I mean, you see these people that look Asian. They were the leaders. Her father was the leader of Peru, which Peru is actually not like other Latin American countries. In fact, they have more indigenous people than Latin American countries. And then Bolivia is the only country in Latin America that has more indigenous, or that's a majority indigenous country. They have 55% of their population is indigenous, and they have a indigenous president, Evo Morales. But Evo Morales, and it's funny that what the scandal they try to put against him. They tried to say, oh yeah, he was cheating and using state security to protect his person he was cheating on. It's funny how people get into the personal lives of these people and these questionable decisions that these people did. But I also got a question. These people act like they're so good and high and mighty or whatever. If they had millions of dollars, how faithful would this worst case scenario? That actually the scandal's true, whatever. If they had millions of dollars and were in that position, how would they actually be 100%? Oh yeah, I'm not gonna chase any women, even if they are literally. I mean, at that point, you have women all over you. You have hundreds of women that would literally go, come in your room naked. At that point, I mean, you're talking about it. That's some temptation right there. I mean, at that point, I think that most people would crack. And in Latin America, it's different. I mean, it's like marriage. Yeah, it's still a marriage. Yes, they're supposed to be the relationship supposed to be just between that man and woman, but there's kind of a leniency. I mean, it's kind of expected that the guys are probably at some point going to be chasing women. So it's a little bit. You got to take also. You gotta take things a little bit from a culture perspective. Our culture, the expectations of our culture are a little bit different from their expectations. And so right now in Russia also there was even they even tried to put the same kind of stuff against Putin, saying that, oh look, he right after he divorced his wife, he got the 30-year-old gymnast girlfriend or whatever. And it's like, Well, what are you assuming that just because you're assuming that he couldn't get a girlfriend in that short period after he got divorced for one thing? I mean, come on, he is the president of the country. I mean, you can't put how you as a regular person or what your buddies as a regular person how hard it is for them to get a girlfriend compared to the president of a country, and not only the president of a country, but one that's in. I mean, this guy's a very interesting person that has many hobbies. It's actually, I mean, it's not like he's, for example, I don't know, Erdogan or something like that. That yeah, he might have trouble getting laid in Vegas with a fistful of 20s. Putin is Putin. So I think that the scandals against him are ridiculous. But when you start getting into the personal life, when you have to go into the personal lives and what they were doing, the little questionable decisions they had in their personal lives, that they may or may not write it, or may or may not be true, then you really are really stretching for scandals. And then not to the political scandals like what has unfolded in the United States in 2016 with all these emails being released, or the scandals of Israel, where these leaders are calling for genocide and deportation of people that they're supposed to be treating equally, but prove that they treat them like animals and want them out of their country. Israel, it's not even scandals at this point. It's just that their nature to the core. I mean, it's a scandal. Their whole country is a scandal. Their whole history from 1948 on is a scandal because they live on stolen land. They support Jim Crow type segregation. They have 411 nuclear weapons with leaders that are very willing to press that button because these people are sociopaths, psychopaths. Benjamin Netanyahu, you see the look on his face, and it's seething evil. There's no defense of it. You see Benjamin Netanyahu, and in his voice is emotionless, passionless, just purely. It sounds like that. What you imagine if the devil would sound like. I mean, I can't even. That voice is deep. I mean, that's hard. That's hard to and just scary sound. I mean, I can't do that impression. Don't even ask me on that. Netanyahu is, the fact that he's this man that just relies mainly on being a militaristic war hawk and throwing around racist statements about Arabs and other peoples, and you have their leader said that they were divine gods on this planet, and goes on to how everybody else is practically pieces of shit to them, or how they're superior to everybody else. And you have Ariel Sharon and these people that were also said very horrid stuff about the rest of the world and the Palestinians. That's their country. Their country is genocide, war, murder, bombing. And ever since Israel's existence came about, I mean, I'm not talking about biblical Israel, but ever since Israel came about in 1948, their country has contributed to the destabilization of the Middle East that was generally peaceful before that. And now it's been completely a shit show since 19. Hey everybody, sorry about that. Apparently we had some dead air there, which really sucks because I'm getting into a pretty passionate speech about Israel's existence ever since 1948 has been of war, murder, genocide. Has been of these horrid travesties toward against humanity, these crimes against humanity, these actions against humanity that Israel's committed. It's been horrid, and in the Middle East, and this the United States has been helping as well. Saudi Arabia recently, but they've been trying to pull apart the Middle East and all this unity that they used to have. It used to be a rather peaceful place, rather than this completely divided in wars and coups and bombings and terrorism that now exists in the Middle East. It was much different not too long ago, but they've been really trying to pull apart the Middle East, and especially in recent years, we've had the Syria. They've been trying to pull apart Alawite from Sunni. They've been trying to pull apart all throughout the Middle East: Christian from Muslim, Sunni from Shia, Kurdish from Arab from Persian, Iraqi from Iranian. Keep going on and on and on of the people that they're trying to divide, from Iraqi to Iranian to Sunni to Shia. And then what they're trying to do in Syria, pull apart Shia from Sunni, Alawite from Shia. But a lot of the Syrian people said, we had enough. We will stand up to Zionism. We will fight against these proxies, these mercenaries that you've unleashed on our country, and that you bastards will be kicked out, and we will reunite our country under Assad. That's what they've told them. And then you have the Christians and the Muslims, the Christians and the Muslims are fighting together inside that country. The Christian and Muslim community are not being pulled apart from each other, and they, just like the last 50, 60 years, they've stayed united, and they still stand united, the Christian and Muslim community. And in Syria, you have the true Muslims, not the Wahhabism that are fighting on the other side, but the true Muslims. They want true equality they want equality for all, and they want freedom for their country, and they don't fall for the Wahhabi lies from these people that are the spin doctors from Saudi Arabia, these liars from Saudi Arabia, these liars from the United States, these liars from Israel, these liars that ultimately all work for the New World Order. When we talk about the Wahhabist ideology, a lot of the Muslim population in Syria says they won't fall for it, because it's ultimately this is not what a lot of the stuff is not what is preached in the Quran. This is not this ideology is hate. This ideology is murder. This ideology is head chopping. This ideology is bombing. That's not what they stand for. And you have the Muslims, the Christians working together. You have the Christians and militia standing by Assad. You have, and ultimately, what has happened in Syria, despite all the horrid stuff that's happened in Syria, there's been a lot of stuff that, if this continues, the New World Order plan will fail, and it'll be this could save the world, the people of the world, from having to endure what the bankers have in store for us. If these things continue, it could save the people of the world from having to endure what the bankers have in store for us, which is the New World Order, fascist government, a worldwide surveillance. Syria has been a microcosm, somewhat to an extent, of what a World War III could look like if the world was actually to fully fall into a state of war. Syria, a formerly modern country, in 2008 was a beautiful country, modern. The people were not fighting over ethnic differences and stuff like that. Now it's bombed. There's terrorist attacks all the time. The United States is droning people. There's bombings left and right by many different Western countries. And then when Russia comes in to actually annihilate ISIS, they start saying that they're the ones that are committing war crimes and that they're killing people, which is ridiculous. for them to be saying that. They're doing the bombings. They're the ones that bombed the weddings over there in Afghanistan. They're the ones that are doing the war crimes in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and what's next? Iran on the United States world domination tour. That's what you could call it. I mean, there's a shirt like that they can get, a thing that says that, like, United States world domination tour, and it shows like all the countries that they bombed after World War II, which is a staggering amount of countries. American people just eat it up. Oh, they're the next enemy. They think this is all like some kind of superhero comics, and now we're the superhero. And what I mean by we is the U.S. military, but the United States military is not seen as the superhero by a lot of the world, and rightfully so. Because what the United States military is doing, they're hired guns for the military-industrial complex. The military-industrial complex that Eisenhower talked about back in the 50s, but everybody seems to, that's not a speech that you see in our textbooks. No. And then they whitewash in your textbooks. JFK, remember when JFK was talking about the monolithic and ruthless conspiracy? It wasn't about fucking communism. It was about the New World Order and the bankers. That's what he was really talking about. Why do you think he was talking about secret societies and secret oaths, secret courts and secret judges and all that stuff? You know, why was he so vague? If it was a speech about communism, there would be no reason to have to be so vague about it. He was being vague because he could only go so far when he talked about the bankers. And not long after, his head blew up on national television by supposedly Lee Harvey Oswald. That fucking, apparently he dangled off of a ledge. I mean, that's the only way. Because if you've ever been to the Assassination Museum in Dallas, Texas, I've never have, but I'm just going by the Bill Hicks account of it. There's a big tree in the way. And that's why people don't really publicize the guests to go to the Assassination Museum in Dallas, because people will be like, no fucking way. I can't even see the road from here. The Bill Hicks, he talks about it, and then he goes on to the simple physics, left, or was it back and to the left? Back and to the left. If the bullet makes me do that or whatever, that must account for, way over there. You know, it must have come from the 6th floor from over there at the Texas School Book Depository. Got 3 shots off in 8 seconds, apparently, and he got 66.67% accuracy on those shots. If you look at his military record, it wasn't even that great of a sniper. And JFK was dead, and the LBJ came into presidency. Federal Reserve comes into full swing again, and the Cold War is back in session 100%. Just like that was the assassination of JFK. People are like, it was 53 years ago. Why do you still care like that? Because if you look what happened afterwards. We had LBJ, the New World Order came back in full swing after the JFK assassination. The famous book suppository building. That's what somebody in the chat room. You know, I think I've got that messed up one time, but it's the whole thing now. I mean, the whole talk about the JFK and stuff like that. It always gives me a big face, a big palm right on my face, my left palm. You know, I do the face palm. I do my left palm right on my face, and I'm just like, God, how do people fall for this shit? You know, how many years later? 52 years later. I mean, there was actually more people who used to believe it was a conspiracy back like in the 70s. I think numbers were up by like 70% at one point. Then nowadays it's like 56%. And a lot of people believe it's a conspiracy only to the point that the Cubans or Russians did or stuff like that, which they've completely missing the point there. Cubans or Russians weren't involved with it. You know what? There were Cubans involved, but not Castro-type Cubans. The right-wing Cubans, they're pissed off that they know that JFK didn't go in there and bomb them or whatever and take it back over and give it back to the corrupt era, the Batista era, the mafia state of Cuba, the Cuba that the profiteers and the playground of the elite Cuba that existed in the 50s, where you had people like Lucky Luciano and top mobsters from the Chicago mob of the 30s that used to gun down people. That kind of mafia, the actual mafia. And there was also people that were like in the Jewish mafia or whatever. There were associates. A lot of times, like Jews, I think, became associates of the Italian mafia because they all a lot of times lived near each other in New York. So So there's a lot of associates that were Jewish of the Italian mafia. But the Italian mafia had a big role inside of Cuba during the 50s. They made a lot of money turning that place into practically what Cuba was as a giant Las Vegas, with prostitutes everywhere, and cocaine and all kinds of stuff. Now that later, a lot of those people that were once, a lot of the right-wing Cubans became the Cuban cartel later, which Cuban cartel was widely known during the 80s when, people didn't think for 2 seconds after we took in all these Cuban criminals that in the 80s, people were like, oh, they're political refugees or whatever, they'll be fine. We're taking all these Cuban criminals. All of a sudden, we have a spike in murders in Miami, and they're fighting with the Colombian cartel. Oh, wait, we just took in the fucking Cuban cartel. And then all these other, then that place turned into practically a war zone because the Cuban and Colombian cartels were fighting over turf back in the 80s. But yeah, it's the right-wing Cubans. There was apparently some right-wing Cubans were holding up newspapers a few months before JFK. There was some guy, Castanedos, who was saying, oh yeah, well, I can't wait till November 22nd. We'll have our day with JFK. And they were obviously disgruntled with JFK because the Bay of Pigs invasion didn't go the way they wanted to, which JFK wasn't full in on the Bay of Pigs invasion. He didn't really want to do it because what the people around him wanted to do, these nut jobs in the CIA during Operation Northwoods, which they drafted up to do stuff like 9/11. Well, the first thing they wanted to do with Operation Northwoods was to blow up one of our planes and blame it on Cuba, and then they could start a war. Oh, it seems simple enough, right? We'll just kill a bunch of innocent people on a plane, so we can start a war and kill more innocent people when we go bomb the shit out of them. Oh, wait, sorry. Free the shit out of them. Free the shit out of them. We're gonna drop some fucking freedom on them. I'm telling you. We're gonna drop some fucking freedom on them, and we're gonna free them Cubans, and we're gonna start going into my redneck accent. We're gonna free them Cubans, and we're gonna absolutely drop 100 bombs of pure American liberty. That liberty seems like a little bit of a big word for redneck. They really know because it's really it's one of those patriot words that they don't really know, but they just use it all the time because they're a patriot. But honestly, though, I mean, somebody said that the Cuban cartel also, with some people that were revolting from the war. That makes sense. I mean, some of the people probably didn't like what Cuba was doing in Angola, which Cuba sent some troops over there during the 1970s over to Angola to help them fight the Portuguese, I believe, who the Angolans were trying to separate from. And so I think of course, maybe some of the more racist Cubans probably didn't like the fact that they're helping Africans, and they probably did join the Cuban cartel. In fact, now that I think about it, we're in the Cuban cartel. I mean, I don't think there were black dudes, even though there's a lot of black dudes in Cuba. I think there's some pretty racist Cubans. In fact, I know there are some pretty racist Cubans. So I'm sure that some of those people in the Cuban cartel were some of those racist Cubans that didn't like the fact that they were helping an African liberation movement over there in Angola against a white European country. There's a lot of the Cuban population are completely white, and there's a lot of Cuban population that's black. It's like 65% of the population, I believe, in Cuba is considered white. Even though, in this country they would be considered Hispanic, Hispanic's not really a race, more of a region you're from. But, to me, I think it often gets, what I've noticed is it often gets mistaken, and I even use it that way, is Hispanic with mestizo, which is a race, which just means white and native mixed of the whatever place, Colombian native or whatever. Mestizo is a term, is the actual ethnicity that a lot of Hispanics, most of the Hispanics you see in this country are. And then there's even, like, for example, there's black Hispanics, which we still call, which sometimes it seems to be in this, it's like, if you saw them regularly, you just think them as another black person, but then when you start hearing them speak Spanish, then we start calling them Hispanic. It's kind of weird, the ambiguous nature to call Hispanics in this country, but that's a little bit off topic. What was also interesting is the fact of how the touchiness of when it comes to the Jewish group in this country, that it's like we can't necessarily call them white, but we can't necessarily call them. They like to call themselves white, I think, because it's a religion. But at times, then they like to call themselves that. Oh yeah, it's not just religion; it's an ethnic group or whatever. So you're Jewish, not white, right? And then it starts to get this touchy subject. I always find that a little bit. I find it a little bit interesting for sure. I just find the touchiness of anything, Israel related, Zionist related. Of course, it's so touchy. They make it where you can't touch it with a 50-foot pole. A lot of these topics, and if you even try to reach your pole in, they call you anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic. I don't even like to use the word anti-Semitic anymore because it's not a real insult. It's not a real thing. It's like calling somebody a shithead or something. That's a shithead's a real insult. Calling someone anti-Semitic is not an insult because it's not a real thing. Anti-Semitic is to be against really what a lot of times standing up for the Palestinians. You're being pro-Semitic because those are Semitic people. People in Israel, Europeans that moved there and converted to Judaism way back, like 800, but they're not Semitic people. They're not from Palestine. Why do they have one of the highest rates of skin cancer in the world? Because they're not supposed to be there. They're supposed to be back in Europe. That kind of sun is too bad on them, and that's why Israel has a terrible rate of skin cancer. I think they have the highest rate in the world of skin cancer. I say that I just find that as an interesting fact, and it just speaks volumes to that their bodies are not adapted to being there because they haven't been there that long. They've only been there a few generations. You have Benjamin Netanyahu, for example. His father was from Hungary, and his name is Benjamin Miljowski. That's his real name, not Benjamin Netanyahu. That's more of a fake name, more like a nom de guerre. If you want to get a little fancy, or you could trace back, for example. Those Palestinians have been there possibly all the way back to biblical times. A lot of the biblical Jews converted to Islam in around 600, 700 when Muhammad started spreading his religion around the area, which not too far away in Mecca in Saudi Arabia, which is not too far from where Israel is today. And a lot of those people converted the biblical Jews to Islam. So a lot of those people that are descendants of those biblical Jews that are described in the Bible are living in Palestine today. So if you really want to protect the descendants of the biblical Jews, you protect the Palestinians. Because if you're going against them by protecting their murderers, which are the Israelis. I don't know why it's so hard and why. It's funny what people get and what people don't get, but. People, when you start talking about this stuff, they get so lost. And even people that are in the truther movement, I've had people they talk about the truther movement, but they don't want to touch Zionism. They don't want to touch Israel. They don't want to talk. They don't want to touch anything. They start getting all weirded out, and they start giving you that fluoride stare back. And you want to say like an Obi-Wan voice or something like that. The fluoride is strong with you, Goy. Yeah, that's what you want to say. But you try to reason with them, but they'll start saying, "Oh, but the Bible says that we have to protect Israel, and there are God's chosen people." And then you bring up the fact that about all the stuff how it actually historically these are not the same biblical Jews. Not the Israelites are actually in Palestine now, and also if they were the true new Israel, like described in the kingdom of if they were the actually Israel, like described in the Bible, the biblical Israel, they wouldn't need a military because God would be protecting them. That's what it says in the Bible. So they like to ignore parts of the Bible and then tell you the parts of the Bible that's favorable to what they believe personally, and they'll talk about you and they'll criticize you for supposedly ignoring parts of the Bible. That's what they're doing, and they're criticizing you about it. So that's really low when you think about it. It's very, very low. And also, I just love how some people, if you truly believe in the King James version of the Bible, KJV, you are a little bit deceived because King James is an absolute shithead colonialist that really started the colonial program over here and started the killing of Native Americans. Because during his time was the Jamestown settlement, I believe. And there was also a major plot against him because he was such a shithead. And he revised the Bible to be favorable of his monarchy and his authoritarian government. So I think that I think that ultimately a lot of these, unfortunately, a lot of the truther community has been very deceived by people, these theocrats practically, that want to put not true Christianity but the perverted version of modern Christianity. And not, they say, well, at least we're not the Joel Osteen people, but you're still you're the King James Version people. King James Version is, they say, well, it's 95% accurate. Says who? Other person. You didn't personally go fact check it. And I'm sure that if you went to, like, for example, I'm sure the Patriarch of Russia didn't say that. I mean, if any religious authority that's any bit credible left on when he talks about Christianity, it'd probably be the Patriarch of Russia, because they're the original Christian church, pretty much, the Orthodox Russian church. I don't think they use the King James Version of the Bible. I'm pretty sure they use some other version. But a lot of people that are in that boat don't even know who the fuck the Patriarch is of Russia, and don't even know anything about that. So, and again, for the last time on the chat room, is that there's no call-ins this week. By the way, if anybody is, a lot of people in the chat room want to call in or whatever. Do your little part. I mean, if you got Skype and you can do conference calls, call me up or something. Chat with me here. Anybody wants to volunteer and do the studio man. That's it. You could do the studio, and instead of complaining about it in the chat room, or not really complain, but you keep asking, I keep giving you answers so that we don't have it. You can help out and actually get a call line set up. So, and I think that that would be definitely beneficial to the show to have some callers. And I need somebody that can actually. It also, I know it sounds a little bit dictatorial of a set of radio fashion, to be doing it this way, but I need somebody that, if I message you, cut them. I don't like people. I don't like when there's certain stuff that I don't allow. And it's not really, really opinion stuff like that. It's more like, cursing at me and stuff like that. I don't allow, or major distraction of the show. I remember that one guy that went on 25 minutes that told me how bad Islam, and that's how I pronounce it, Islam, and this Canadian dude that was very vague about his identity and stuff. I think he was some kind of shill of some sort, possibly. He was on 25 minutes and totally derailed my show to some extent. So I'm not going to allow that shit. So if you want to just keep those couple things in mind. You got to be here every night, or at least 3 out of 4 nights is the most I'm going to let. Like, if you're absent 2 nights in a row, I probably won't keep you for the third night. I do like pretty good attendance on that. That's one thing some co-hosts I had before had pretty bad punctuality, and when it comes to people I know, I'll be a little bit more lenient. But when it comes to people I don't know, I'm not going to be very lenient, because I don't know you. Why should I give you a personal favor? And anyways, so share this knowledge for people that do know what's going on, and actually got the information to people that don't know what's going on. Because there's a lot of people that have no clue, and are completely asleep, and completely not in tune with what's going on right now, and they need to get this stuff. They need to, because it's time to run out. That's for sure. As we inch closer, and I see we're getting closer to the Hillary versus Donald Trump debates. That's the entertainment before the big shit show that's going to happen afterwards. Syria is like I said, they had 50 to 60 years of unity of their Muslim and Christianity population. They try to tear it apart. That's what they're trying to do to us. We got to unite, and we got to fight together as we go on. So, and we got to make sure we don't become another battle zone. We need to get out of this before the whole world turns into a giant battle zone. Because once that happens, it doesn't really ring true how bad the stuff is till it actually happens. So you actually see cities and your city being destroyed, and you see bombs falling. I mean, people can't even imagine horrors until you actually live it. And I haven't lived it, and I couldn't imagine how bad the horrors are. But I just know it's something that we don't want to see. And the best way to avoid that is by rising up soon, rather than waiting for a lot of stuff to unfold and then being very regretful of it later, because it will be this is no joke. It is no joke, all the stuff that I talk about on the show and what has happened, what Israel's plans. People think that Israel is going to keep the American people's interest in heart, in mind, are completely full, because to us, we're just pawns. It's like Henry Kissinger said about military men, that they're just filthy men they're just filthy animals they're just animals to be used in foreign policy. That's what he saw in the military. He saw a military that low, and that's what a lot of people that are interested in going to the military need to know, is that that's what they think. The people that are in charge of this country think of you as a military man. They don't think of you as an honorable serviceman. They don't think of you as an honorable patriot. They know you're serving false patriotism, and they know you're serving the lies and serving the murder, serving the fascism, serving the racism coming from Israel that has influence over our foreign policy. That's what you're supporting. If you're really truly supportive of, if you're in the military and truly want to do the goals of the United States foreign policy. Anyone that is in the military tonight listening to the show, I highly encourage you to consider what you're doing. Take a long look at yourself and decide if you want to be a patriot, that you can't do what you're doing right now, because that's not being a patriot. To be a patriot, you need to leave the military, and if you truly want to be a patriot, may join a militia, because the military at this point does not represent any interest in the American people. If you're considering joining the military tonight, please consider what you're doing. Please listen to my words right now. Please research what the military really does. Look what they do in Iraq and Afghanistan. Look at the murder they committed over there. Look at the families torn apart by the wars, by the drones. And this is not the freedom. This is not the democracy that for a long time Americans believed to be fighting for. This is murder. This is for greed. This is for the bankers. This is for fascism. That's what the United States military right now is truly fighting for. And they are just the hired guns of the military-industrial complex. Just like a president warned us of back in the 1950s, a long time ago. But you don't know the speech because it wasn't in the textbooks. To all the 18-year-olds right now listening to the show, or right now like me, 18 years old, don't think I'm just a fool and I'm a crazy guy. Take my advice, actually respect what I have to say, and actually take a long look at yourself and take a long look at your family. Do you want to don't join the military and get killed and never see your family again because you were hired to be a gun for the military-industrial complex? Anyways, anyone that tuned in tonight, thanks for listening to.
Sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not. In this world, there's room for everyone. I'm sorry.
Point of no return and nobody can stop it. Malcolm Little when he knelt before Elijah Muhammad, the comet that killed the dinosaurs, changing the earth. They love to criticize, they always say I changed for the worse. Like prescription pills when you misusing them, nigga. The Templar Knights when they took Jerusalem, nigga, and figured out what was buried under Solomon's temple, Al-Aqsa. The name is not coincidental. I know too much, the government is trying to murder me. No coming back like cutting your wrists open vertically. How could the serpent be purposely put in charge of the country? Genetic engineered sickness spread amongst me. My people are so hungry that they attack without reason, like a fucking dog ripping off the hand that feeds them. Immortal technique is treason to the Patriot Act. So come and get me, motherfucker, cause I'm not coming back. This is the point from which I can never return. If I back down